Howdy, Boster here with the Ohio Health MS Center, talking to you today about multiple sclerosis and the MRI. I recently completed a video where I discussed new MRI activity, focusing on new inflammatory markers such as contrast-enhancing lesions or new T2 bright lesions. I want to turn our attention now to progression. There are other MRI markers that teach us not about inflammation, but about correlates to progression, and they're important to look at as well. These include T1 hypo-intensities, or T1 black holes, and accelerated rates of brain atrophy. In this video, we'll be discussing both. By way of review, here we see the T2 hyperintense, or T2 bright lesions. These are the most commonly discussed bright spots seen on MRI. These lesions, as discussed in previous videos, have to do with inflammation and excessive water. I'm now going to show you a T1 hypointensity, or a black hole. And here we see T1 hypointensities, oftentimes referred to as black holes. Black holes represent a hole. It's an area where the inflammation was so intense that it ate away at the brain tissue, and you're left with a small amount of brain damage. T1 hypointensities, or black holes, correlate better with long-term disability than the bright spots that we looked at earlier. I encourage you, when you have an MRI, to ask your clinician, do you see any new black holes, or do you see any black holes that have gotten larger? I'll also conclude by sharing this scan is an extreme example of T1 hypointensities. We now turn our attention to brain atrophy, or shrinkage. All adults have a slow rate of brain shrinkage as we age, and that's normal, in the same way that our skin gets thinner as we age. People with MS are at risk of having accelerated rates of brain shrinkage, up to 10 times faster. This correlates with long-term disability arguably better than almost anything else. It also has strong correlates to cognitive impairment in MS. Now, this first example is an extreme example, just to make the point. On the left, we have a healthy brain. The black spaces in the center, the ventricles, are very hard to see because they're slit-like. On the right, you have a person heavily affected by multiple sclerosis. This is one of our patients we've de-identified, and what you can see here is severe atrophy. You see that the spaces, the black spaces, are much, much bigger, and that the actual brain tissue is much smaller. Here is a second example making the same point. On the left, we see the normal healthy brain, and on the right, a very severe example of brain atrophy in MS. Now, I'm using these extreme examples so that they're easy to see visually, but picking it up from one scan to the next is very challenging. What I'm going to show you now is something that we at our center use. It's a software package, and it's called Neuro Quant. And it does a volumetric analysis. That's a fancy pants word for measuring the size of the brain analysis. And it allows us to compare the size of the brain of that person against a population of that age group and gender. And it puts it into a range, and that's what we see here. What you see here is a report. It's been de-identified, but this is a real person severely affected by MS. And you can see in that first graph on the left the healthy aging of the brain. As you move from left to right, you see the person would become older, and as you go from top to bottom, that's the volume of the brain shrinking. And you can see that median line kind of slowly curves down over time. The point is where the patient is at. And you can see that as compared to an age-matched control group, this person has severe atrophy. Now, this is a severe example, but we use this software with each MRI that we obtain almost annually in an attempt at tracking brain atrophy. It's not an exact science, and discussing the details are outside the scope of this video. I share this just to share that brain atrophy is important, and increasingly there are new ways that we can track it on MRI. Once again, this is Boster with Ohio Health. Thank you for tuning in. If you like this video and you would like to see similar content, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications. Also, please leave your questions and comments below. Thank you. Have a great day.